Grahame, we've seen a number of polls now, the Newspoll earlier in the week and then another Fairfax poll today, or Channel 9 poll, I should say, with the Prime Minister losing a bit of bark politically. I guess it's inevitable when you've got more than half the nation's population in lockdown.
I think that's right. I think it's been a tough month for the government and sort of everything is focused on the Prime Minister himself. Not a lot of help out there for him. You know, he's out there every day. Whether or not he should be doing a press conference every day, I've never sort of agreed with that, but that's what it is. Yeah, he got some bark taken off him. The government got some bark taken off them. But strangely, it is not lifting Mr Albanese. It's lifting the Labor Party vote. And there's no doubt if an election were held on Saturday, it'd be a very close result. Probably a hung parliament. But that's why it's not on Saturday. Yeah, the government has had a rough... it doesn't matter whether the polls are 100% right or close enough. I think you get the feeling at the moment that the government has had a rough month and people have taken some bark off them.
Bruce Hawker, what are your thoughts on this, given we are now, well, not far off... We're not far off the federal election season, believe it or not.
Well, the timing's bad for the government. They've really got to try to raise the bar and get these vaccines out. Everything they've done so far suggests that they're going to fall short again. And that's going to mean that Labor will just go around saying, what did he tell us? It's not a race, it's not a race, it's not a race. Well, it is a race. And in fact, maybe the race is even over in a way. If the government can't get itself out of this mess. And Albanese, well, he's the opposition leader. And all the time I worked for Bob Carr, I don't think he ever was more preferred as Premier over the premiers of the day when he was opposition leader. So it's not really a good indicator of people's voting intentions. The best indicator is what they say they're going to do. And at the moment, there's a strong surge towards Labor.
Yeah, look, I think the election is roughly about 9 months off. That's a fair while. But I still think that come the election, you know, while ever Australia, unlike the rest of the world, is not building mass graves for thousands of dead people around the outskirts of a city, then we're doing well. And we are doing well. But somehow or other, that message is being lost in the minutiae of everything, you know, how many people are in hospital today. We're still doing all right. But I think Mr Albanese's done quite well with his one-liners. But he also had a very strange week in Queensland. You know, the idea of the opposition leader running up to Queensland is a good idea. And he gets up there and after decades of saying coal mining bad, he gets to Adani and he says, Adani, job's good. And then he goes into a coal mine and won't let the journalists in. Well, what on earth did he say? And this week he's down in Tasmania. I hope he meets Bob Brown and tells Bob Brown, hey, coal mining good, mate. Doubt it.
Bruce, your thoughts on... I mean, I guess we often say, don't we, that people vote out governments as opposed to voting in oppositions. That's generally the rule of thumb in Australian politics, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I don't think it's necessarily a very helpful one. I think oppositions can help the government out of office if they're very effective. And I think, though, in this case, the government's doing the damage to itself. Albanese's holding his fire on policies. He's not going to come up with the range of policies that Bill Shorten had. Not going to go down that path again. He's in states that aren't in lockdown, going around talking to people in electorates where they have to hold or win. That seems to me like a pretty smart tactic and probably taken out of John Howard's book. And John Howard, as Grahame knows better than anybody else, used to really like to go into an electorate, spend a couple of days there, really getting to know the place and getting to be known by them before he moved on. I think that's a good strategy to be a tactic to be adopting.
Yeah, indeed. The other thing is the challenge for the Prime Minister, and I think those around him know this, is that he's basically dealing with 8 additional opposition leaders at the moment, Bruce.
Well, indeed. And the reason he's doing that is he hasn't managed the rollout of the vaccines to anyone's satisfaction. You can get Greg Hunt on talking like a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman, talking about all the whiz-bang numbers and this, that and the other thing. Well, the only problem is that when you plug it in, it doesn't work. And that's the difficulty that they've got right now. 11% of the population's being vaccinated, and that's nowhere near what they said they were going to have. They haven't got anywhere near the number of vaccines that they should have had. They made a mess of that, and no amount of talking is going to get that sorted out. The reason Australia isn't in the mess that other countries are in is basically because the state governments have instituted strong lockdowns when they have to, and they've made sure that their people are protected. The federal government has closed down borders, but internationally to a large extent, but has still let people in who have spread the virus into our communities. That's the problem. That's
Grahame,
why the public.
What do you say to the suggestion that I want you to respond to that point that Bruce made, that Greg Hunt's effectively selling the political equivalent of a Dyson vacuum cleaner?
Not a Dyson vacuum cleaner. They're pretty good.
And Dysons are good. They're very expensive. Look, but on your question, the premiers, you're right that the premiers are a bit all over the place and the chief ministers. But I think at the moment it's nearly time that National Cabinet got together again and came up with a proper set of protocols as to what is a hotspot. So where should the money and the support go? And let's have agreement from 8 leaders plus the Prime Minister.
You're talking about minutiae, that's getting down to it. We've got to just deal with it and move on, don't we, in terms of the vaccination rollout and start planning that?
Well, I think the next step, if you can get agreement on, hey, these are the hotspots, then you can open up certain things. You know where the support is going. But then you get to the agreement, how many people have got to get vaccinated before we can open the whole show? That's a tougher question.
Grahame and Bruce, appreciate it as always. Thanks. Now, the countdown is